What is transactional funding? Transactional funding is a short-term loan used to fund consecutive real estate closings. Transactional funding is a short-term loan which is given to a real estate investor planning to do what is often referred to as a quick flip. Transactional funding is often explained where the transactional funds are used between the time the original property owner signs the closing documents he is required to sign and the time the end purchaser signs his required closing documents. The transactional funding is defined by the timeline the buying investor requires money for the A to B transaction to be funded. The buyers and sellers in the transaction are designated by the letters A, the original property owner and seller, the investor B, both a buyer and a seller, and the final buyer C, who is the final owner of the property. Transactional funding is also known as flash funding because the actual time of this real estate financing should only take minutes or hours. Some closing agents in different states escrow both sides of the closing until all the money and documents are in place, and afterwards they finish the exchange of the deed to the property. If by any chance the closing agent needs court orders or city examinations, these closings can be delayed for days or even months. The transactional funder should not have his cash sitting in the closing agent's escrow account all of this time, but rather he should wire the money only on the day of the closing of both legs of the double closing. Transactional funding is desirable over different types of short-time funding and is somewhat similar to hard money. However, the cost of transactional funding is much lower because of the time period involved, and no credit report on the buyer is needed, and the documentation required is negligible. There are transactional funding funders who publicize 30-day transactional funding, 60-day transactional funding, and even 90-day transactional funding. In fact, these extended time periods are not transactional funding, but are rather hard money loans referred to as extended transactional funding. When the property is sold to an end buyer, the loan is then paid back. Typically, extended transactional funding has points and expenses connected to borrowing it.